On July 22, 1991, police officers knocked on apartment 213 at 924 North 25th Street in Milwaukee. They expected to find a drunk man with a knife. Instead, they found a human head in the refrigerator. 3 more heads in a bucket. A human heart in the freezer. 7 painted skulls on a shelf. And Polaroid photos documenting stages of dismemberment. This was the home of Jeffrey Dahmer. And this is the story of how a quiet, intelligent boy became America's most infamous cannibal killer. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. To everyone who knew him as a child, he seemed perfectly normal. But the cracks were forming early. His father Lionel was a research chemist. His mother Joyce struggled with depression and prescription drug addiction. The marriage was tense, the arguments constant. Young Jeffrey learned early that attention was scarce. At age 4, he underwent double hernia surgery. After that, his personality shifted. The energetic child became withdrawn and quiet. When the family moved to Bath Township, Ohio, Jeffrey discovered the woods behind his house. He began collecting dead animals, dissecting them, preserving their bones in jars of formaldehyde. At age 10, he decapitated a dog carcass and nailed the body to a tree. He showed it to a friend as a prank, claiming he found it that way. By high school, he was drinking heavily. Classmates called his attention-seeking antics doing a Dahmer. He would fake epileptic seizures in stores for money to buy alcohol. But behind the clown act, darker fantasies were forming. At 16, he lay in wait with a baseball bat for a jogger he found attractive. The jogger never came. But the urge to control, to dominate, to possess, that urge was growing. In the summer of 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer was 18 years old. His parents had just divorced. His mother had moved out of state with his younger brother. His father had moved to a motel. Jeffrey was alone in the family home. On June 18, he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. Stephen was also 18, hitchhiking to a rock concert. Jeffrey offered him beer, and Stephen accepted. They drank and listened to music for hours. When Stephen said he wanted to leave, Jeffrey later explained, "I didn't want him to leave. So I killed him." He hit Stephen with a 10-pound dumbbell, then strangled him. He stripped the body, masturbated over it, then dragged it to the basement. The next day, he dissected the body. He buried the remains in the backyard. Weeks later, he dug them up, dissolved the flesh in acid, crushed the bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered them in the woods. For 9 years, he committed no further murders. But he wasn't healed. He was dormant. He joined the army, trained as a combat medic, and was stationed in West Germany. But his drinking worsened. In 1981, he was discharged. He spent months homeless in Miami Beach before returning to Ohio. In 1982, his father sent him to live with his grandmother in West Allis, Wisconsin. It was here that Jeffrey Dahmer's murderous compulsion would resurface. By 1985, Dahmer was frequenting gay bathhouses and bars. He began drugging men with sedatives so he could explore their bodies while they were unconscious. When the bathhouses banned him, he moved to hotel rooms. On November 20, 1987, he met Stephen Twomey at a bar and rented a room at the Ambassador Hotel. The next morning, Dahmer woke up to find Twomey dead, his chest crushed, his body covered in bruises. Dahmer had no memory of the killing. He bought a large suitcase, transported the body to his grandmother's house, and dismembered it. He kept the skull for 2 weeks, using it for masturbation before boiling it with bleach and discarding it. Over the next 3 years, Dahmer killed 14 more men and boys. His pattern was consistent: lure them to a location, drug them, strangle them, dismember them. But his methods grew increasingly grotesque. He engaged in necrophilia with nearly every victim. He ate parts of some victims, primarily biceps and heart. He began collecting and preserving skulls, painting them to display in his apartment. In September 1988, Dahmer was arrested for sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy. He received 5 years probation and was required to register as a sex offender. Incredibly, he continued killing while on probation. In May 1990, his grandmother asked him to move out. He rented apartment 213 at the Oxford Apartments in Milwaukee. Alone at last, with no one to answer to, his killing accelerated. He killed 4 men in 1990. 8 more in the first 7 months of 1991. By the summer of 1991, he was killing approximately 1 person per week. His fantasy had evolved. He wanted to create zombies, submissive, living sexual partners who would never leave. He drilled holes into victims' skulls and injected hydrochloric acid or boiling water into their brains. None of his victims survived these experiments. But the attempts continued. Dahmer's neighbors complained constantly. The smell from apartment 213 was unbearable. They heard power saws at all hours. Dahmer told them he was repairing mannequins. But the most devastating failure occurred on May 27, 1991. 14-year-old Konorak Synthesumphone escaped from Dahmer's apartment. Naked, bleeding, barely conscious, he was found wandering the streets by 2 young women who called 911. When police arrived, Dahmer appeared. He told officers that Konorak was his 19-year-old boyfriend, that they had been drinking, that it was a misunderstanding. The women begged the police not to return the boy. Konorak was disoriented and clearly traumatized. The police returned Konorak to Dahmer. They did not check Dahmer's background. They did not run his name. If they had, they would have discovered he was a registered sex offender on probation. Within hours of being returned, Konorak Synthesumphone was dead, drugged, strangled, and dismembered. His skull joined Dahmer's collection. 2 months later, on July 22, 1991, Dahmer picked up a man named Tracy Edwards. In the apartment, Dahmer handcuffed Edwards and held a butcher knife to his chest. But Edwards fought back. He punched Dahmer, freed himself, and ran into the street with a handcuff still dangling from his wrist. Edwards flagged down a passing police car. This time, the officers followed him back to the apartment. When the police entered the bedroom, they found photographs of dismembered bodies. A search of the entire apartment revealed the full horror: a severed head in the refrigerator, 3 more in a bucket, 7 painted skulls, a human heart in the freezer, male genitalia preserved in jars, and an altar constructed from human skulls and candles. Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested. And he began to talk. Dahmer confessed to 17 murders in detail. He described each killing, each dismemberment, each act of necrophilia and cannibalism with clinical precision. He showed police where he had disposed of remains. The trial began on January 30, 1992. The defense argued that Dahmer was insane, that he suffered from borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and a psychotic disorder. 3 court-appointed psychiatrists testified that Dahmer was mentally ill. But the prosecution argued that Dahmer knew exactly what he was doing. He planned his murders. He took steps to avoid detection. He preserved evidence of his crimes because he wanted to relive them. In a strange moment, Dahmer told the court, "I knew what I was doing was wrong. I just couldn't stop." The jury deliberated for just 5 hours. They found Dahmer guilty but legally sane. He was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms, a total of 957 years in prison. Later that year, he pleaded guilty to the murder of Stephen Hicks in Ohio, receiving a 16th life sentence. To the victims' families, Dahmer said, "I know my punishment will do nothing to bring them back. I am sorry for what I did." Dahmer was sent to the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. He was placed in solitary confinement for his own protection. In prison, Dahmer underwent a transformation. He was baptized, read the Bible daily, and declared himself a born-again Christian. He told a prison psychologist, "I deserve to die for what I did. I wish it every day. His father Lionel later wrote a book titled, A Father's Story, struggling to understand how his son became a monster. The Dahmer family home in Ohio was demolished. The Oxford apartments were torn down in 1992. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was cleaning a prison bathroom with two other inmates. One of them, Christopher Scarver, attacked Dahmer with a metal bar from the exercise equipment. Dahmer suffered severe head trauma and died on the way to the hospital. Scarver later said he believed God had instructed him to kill Dahmer. He also killed another inmate, Jesse Anderson, in the same attack. Jeffrey Dahmer was cremated. His ashes were divided between his parents. Jeffrey Dahmer's case remains one of the most disturbing in American criminal history. Not just because of what he did, but because of what his crimes revealed, a system that failed 17 victims before it finally caught one killer. 17 young men went to a bar, to a party, to a stranger's apartment. And 17 families received phone calls that their sons were never coming home. The question isn't why Jeffrey Dahmer became a monster. The question is, how many times did the system look the other way before anyone stopped him? If you enjoyed this documentary, please like and subscribe for more true crime content. And tell us in the comments, what do you think could have stopped Jeffrey Dahmer before his 17th victim?